It was 6:30 in the morning when the screech of designer heels on concrete snapped me awake mid-swing, trying to fix a loose shutter on my grandmother's porch. All I remember thinking was, here we go again. Brenda Thornfield was storming across my yard like she'd just spotted a wild animal in her garden, full Karen mode, yoga pants, oversized sunglasses, phone clutched like a weapon. She didn't even glance my way as she punched in 911, her voice echoing in the quiet. There's an intruder at 1247 Maple Street. He's destroying property, some kind of drill weapon. I could smell the fresh coffee in the air, mixed with a tension that always seems to settle before justice shows up. She stood there, chest puffed out, practically vibrating, certain this was the day she'd finally see me hauled off. But the patrol car that swung into the drive? Yeah, that was mine. Deputy Remy stepped out, took one look at my sheriff's badge, shook his head, and with a straight face said, "Ma'am, you just called us on us." Brenda's jaw worked silent for once. Sometimes the universe just serves the punchline for you. That wasn't how things started, not by a long shot. 3 months earlier, I'd inherited my grandmother Ruth's house in Willowbrook Estates, a neighborhood so tightly wound they'll fine you for the crime of existing a little too loudly. I was barely settled in adjusting to the creaks of a house filled with ghosts and memories, trying to build something new for my 12-year-old daughter Skylar. Divorce had knocked the wind out of me, but I'd promised myself she gets a real home, not a 2-room apartment with paper-thin walls. Ruth's place was more than property. She raised me after a car crash made me an orphan at 8. There's still her coffee mug on the workshop bench, stained from decades of Maxwell House and midnight repairs. Every Saturday, Skylar and I worked in the rose garden, the scent of pink peace roses, mixing with sawdust and WD-40, the two of us building birdhouses and quietly rebuilding a sense of family. But Willowbrook Estates is a strange beast. 847 homes, $340 a month in HOA fees, enough to make any working dad's wallet ache. Conformity is the local religion, and individuality gets you a violation notice. Apartment living might have been easier, but Skylar deserved better. Or so I kept telling myself, at least until Brenda Thornfield came knocking. Brenda has run the HOA for 8 years because nobody wants to be the one to cross her. Picture the type white BMW with Hopris on the plate, a house that looks more like a museum, and a marble fountain that gurgles day and night. Her husband Bradley owns the dealership with his name on every car commercial, the kind of man who thinks a city council seat is just another accessory. Week 2. I get my first love letter, a violation for the color of my mailbox. Ruth's old black mailbox, the same as half the street, was suddenly an eyesore. $150 fine, going up $50 a day. Bureaucratic bullying at its finest. I bought a can of Forest Glen Green and painted it, hoping that would end things. The chemical sting of fresh paint still burned my nostrils when I spotted Brenda idling at the curb, phone pressed to her face, taking photos of my every move. Every morning for 10 minutes like clockwork, she sat out there. The kind of attention that makes your skin crawl. What I came to realize about HOA boards, there are the folks who want to build a community, and then there are the ones who get off on power trips. Brenda fit the second mold, perfectly clipboard, held like a scepter, ready to deliver royal decrees. The place was a mausoleum for dreams, lawns, perfect houses, silent kids vanished indoors, afraid to break some invisible rule. Even the block parties had died off, replaced by the drone of landscaping crews and the constant patrol of Brenda's white BMW. My neighbors lived like suspects in a police lineup, Gladys Remy sweet as pie, but ducking inside whenever Brenda passed. Marcus Rivera, a fellow Marine, tossing me the occasional nod of solidarity. Military training teaches you a few things: patience, how to watch, how to bide your time. While Brenda waged her campaign of intimidation, I started collecting my own notes. Her rules weren't just strict, they were inconsistently enforced. Bradley's work trucks parked overnight, no problem. My company truck ticketed every time. Board meetings always at 2 p.m. on weekdays. Funny how nobody but the chosen few could ever make it. The same families winning every contest. The stench of fertilizer on those lawns had nothing on the smell of corruption. Then the pettiness turned legal. 2 weeks after Mailbox Gate, Brenda sent a cease and desist, demanding I rip out Ruth's weathered picket fence original to the neighborhood silvered by Ohio winters. The reason: architectural inconsistency with evolving community standards. A $450 legal fee hit my account before I could even read the letter. 30 days to comply or lose the house. That night, surrounded by the familiar clutter of Ruth's workshop, I dove into her files. Every receipt, every permit, every HOA letter since 1985. Turns out Ruth's fence was covered by a grandfather clause installed in '87, protected under the original covenants. And get this, 23 identical fences still stood around Willowbrook, some even newer. Selective enforcement is what lawyers call discriminatory application. You don't enforce the rules for everyone, the rules don't stand. Time to fight back. I built a 30-page evidence file, photos, permits, aerial shots, analyses. Everything lined up. Brenda, feeling bold, scheduled my appeal for the same day as Skylar's school play, as if that had forced me to choose. I showed up in full military dress uniform, medals and all. Let people remember who they're dealing with. Brenda started with her fake smile, but as I laid out every piece of evidence, legal, logical, bulletproof, her board started to sweat. Janet Morrison, usually a ghost, piped up, "Brenda, this exposes us to federal fair housing lawsuits." The vote was 4-1 in my favor. Brenda, left fuming, leaned in and hissed, "This isn't over." But it wasn't defeat in her eyes, it was calculation. 3 weeks later, the real war started. A brand new HOA rule, overnight parking of commercial vehicles, banned no appeals, no grandfathering, and surprise, applied retroactively. My white Ford with a tiny magnetic logo became public enemy number 1. First violation, $200. Second, $500. Third, a property lien. And the harassment got creative orange cones, blocked parking whenever Skylar had friends over, playdates dried up. Brenda's message, isolate the kid, hurt the dad. She got sloppy. While I was looking up county ordinances, I found a gem. Ohio Revised Code prohibits HOAs from restricting commercial vehicles unless they're oversized or hazardous. All those intimidation tactics my ex's lawyer tried during our divorce, turns out you pick up a few tricks. So I filed a formal complaint with the State Housing Authority and then started walking the neighborhood with Skylar, collecting evidence of every other violation Brenda ignored. Skylar, bless her, just wanted to know why I kept photographing trucks. Because the rules have to be fair, honey. Otherwise, they're just weapons. That's when Gladys Remy showed up with the manila envelope that blew things wide open. 5 years of HOA meeting minutes, every contract, every dollar her late husband, the attorney, had insisted on keeping records. Bradley's companies landed every job, no competitive bids, hundreds of thousands, siphoned off board members signing off on work that never happened. When I compared those records to county filings, the numbers didn't add up. They'd stolen nearly $1 million from us, the residents, and nobody said a word until now. Brenda, sensing the tide turning, called an emergency meeting. The notice conveniently skipped my house. Marcus Rivera, ever the brother in arms, slid a copy under my door with a note. "She's trying to railroad you." The agenda was a hit job, enhanced scrutiny protocols for disruptive residents. And then, just to twist the knife, she started rumors about me. Alcohol problems. A violent past, claims my ex-wife ran away in fear. Skylar came home in tears, wondering why we weren't invited to the neighborhood picnic. It's not hate, sweetheart. They're just afraid of anyone who asks questions. I showed up to that meeting anyway. The room was packed, sticky hot with tension. Brenda tried to open with a speech about community standards, but I dropped my evidence right on the table. $890,000 in fraudulent contracts with receipts and signatures. Dead silence. Then Jim Kowalski, retired postal worker, stood up. "I've seen Brenda opening mail that isn't hers more than once." "That's a felony." Brenda tried to claim she had the authority to inspect suspicious mail. Even her own board looked at her like she'd confessed to murder. Sarah Martinez, the CPA, joined in. She'd been tracking the numbers, and what she saw was systematic embezzlement. The meeting erupted, neighbors yelling stories, pouring out, years of intimidation boiling over. I could see Brenda crumbling as the room turned against her. That night at Ruth's old kitchen table, the gravity of it all hit me. Brenda and Bradley's theft wasn't some local scandal. It was organized crime, RICO-level stuff. I found buried in Ruth's files a letter she'd drafted but never mailed a formal complaint about irregularities she'd spotted years before. "If good people don't stand up, corruption wins," she wrote. The sheriff's election was coming up. Something clicked, I could run. Not just fight Brenda, but end this whole rotten system. Next morning, my house turned into campaign HQ. Marcus showed up with black coffee and a folder of contacts, retired cops, firefighters, veterans. Gladys became the unofficial campaign grandmother. Sarah dug through the financials like a bloodhound. Word spread. The old guard came out tired of seeing their tax dollars vanish. We weren't just fighting Brenda anymore. We were fighting for every family like ours folks who just wanted to live in peace. Brenda and Bradley went nuclear. Fake complaints got me investigated, fake reviews trashed my business signs, disappeared overnight. Skylar got bullied, my supporters got cited for phony violations. But every dirty trick just built our case. Then Brenda crossed the line trying to access Skylar's school records, threatening the school with losing their landscaping contract. That, my friends, is a federal crime. The school called me. We documented everything. Brenda's last-ditch play was pure theater. She tried to set me up public confrontation at the mailboxes, her people filming, hoping to catch me losing my cool. But instead, her own live stream caught her coaching witnesses threatening me, spinning lies in real time to the whole neighborhood. Deputy Jake Morrison, my old Army buddy, was first on the scene and cuffed her right there on camera for false reports and interfering with a federal investigation. The Facebook comment section exploded. For the first time in years, people cheered in public. The dominoes fell fast. Feds raided Bradley's dealership. Boxes of shredded documents, evidence of fraud, offshore transfers. Brenda's phone had hours of recorded bribery. Her own live stream meant to bury me became the nail in her coffin. Election night, the courthouse was packed. News crews, neighbors, veterans, parents. I won in a landslide. Reform candidates swept every seat. When I held up the federal indictment listing every stolen dollar and every targeted family, you could feel a weight lift off the room. The prosecutor announced the arrests. Brenda Bradley City Council members, all of them. Brenda, in an orange jumpsuit, apologized through tears. But Skylar, she got the last word. She stepped up, voice steady, and said, "Bad people only win when good people stay quiet." 6 months later, Willowbrook is alive. Fees cut gardens, growing block parties back. Skylar leads a kids club teaching about democracy. The techniques we used got adopted nationwide. Letters started arriving from families we'd never met, telling us they'd fought back and won. One grandmother wrote, "Your courage gave us hope when we felt powerless." Sitting in Ruth's garden, roses in bloom, I finally understood this wasn't just about one crooked board. It was about ordinary people refusing to stay silent. Looking back, I keep thinking about Ruth's words. Democracy only works when citizens participate. Maybe that's the bitter truth we all have to learn. Justice doesn't happen because someone else takes a stand. It happens because we do together. So here's what sticks with me. How far should power go before we fight back? When does enforcing rules become abusing them? And how many people does it take to say, enough is enough, if you've got a wild HOA story or your own fight for justice? Let's hear it. Drop a comment. Your voice matters. And if you want to know what happened when a power-hungry PTA president tried to steal from the school carnival stick around, that's a story with receipts you won't believe.